And welcome to another episode of the Two Fans Podcast. I'm your co-host, Joshua Ament.
And I'm your other co-host, Ari Jesselson.
And today, you know what? I've always introduced stuff. How about you introduce this one?
Yeah, hopefully I don't mess up again, but that's too much weight on my shoulders. You remember what happened, Monday's episode? I think it's best that you do these.
No, that's a whole outro. That's like a planned routine and stuff you gotta get out there. You just introduce us. What are we talking about today?
Yeah, so today we're going to talk about dynasties and how in some sports they're easier to make, what it really takes to become a dynasty in the four major sports here in the US.
All right, see, yeah, it's not that hard. You didn't mess that up.
I can't bring the clown horse right now because my sister's in classes, but next time we'll add that in. We might add that in.
All right. So I want to think, which one do I want to start? I guess I'll start with the NHL because we need to show them a little bit of love there. And I'll say since probably the lockout season 04-05, 'cause that's a pretty good divider to sort of get recent history from where we're looking at. In terms of how many champions uh, there have been 10 in the past 15 years, which definitely tells you there's a lot of parity there. The most amount of Stanley Cups in that span is tied with the Pittsburgh Penguins and my Chicago Blackhawks, with three each. And the Kings also had two. Other than that, every other franchise to won it since the lockout has only won it once. And the last repeat champion was fairly recent, the Penguins in 2016 and 17. But before that, if you want to go back to find a repeat champion, you have to go back to 97, 98 with the Detroit Red Wings.
Yeah, and it's crazy to think about that. I mean, you said 15 years, 10 champions. So it's just kind of because you really don't, when you look at other sports, you see how, this team is always going to be in the playoffs. This team is going to go back to back. This team's going to make the finals. But when we look at hockey, it's not like the case. Now, what's one thing that really shows hockey to be so hard to win a championship and create a dynasty?
I think something that it's something that not a lot of because with the NBA and the NFL, and we'll get to those more in depth in a little bit, but sort of where there are salary caps sort of imposed, but there are a lot of ways, especially in the NBA. We'll get to that where you can maneuver your way around and sort of keep talent and pay for whoever you need. The NHL, it's a pretty hard cap. So once someone wins a championship and they're going to want to get paid, they're probably going to have to go elsewhere, and it's a little harder to keep that continuity. And that's really a theme I think I've noticed that when you're building champion teams, when you're building teams that can win multiple championships, that continuity really helps.
Yeah, and especially with hockey, it really seems like it's harder to build long-term success. We see most of these teams win only 1 year or even go to the playoffs 1 year because these guys want to get paid, and if their current team's not going to pay them, they're obviously going to leave. I think a big factor also for why it's harder is that every team has at least one or two good players, even three or four. So with so many, I think hockey and basketball are the only teams where almost every single team can compete, which makes it harder for these teams to win it at the end of the day.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you just saw last year where you had pretty much two MVPs on one team in Edmonton, with Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl. But those two MVPs, while they may work in maybe in MLB or in the NBA, that doesn't exactly. The Oilers were only the five seed and knocked out pretty early in the qualifiers by the Hawks. So you can really see how it's much less sort of MVP heavy, and you really need a full team.
You
Let's
remember? Sorry, what were you saying?
No, I was going to move on. If you have one more thing you want to add.
Yeah, well, also like it's really how you play as a team. Also, because remember in 2019, the Tampa Bay Lightning were one of the best teams in NHL history. They tied for 62 wins, which was tying the record for it in the playoffs. They got swept by the Blue Jackets, who were the sixth seed, if I'm not mistaken. So it really shows how everyone's in for the fight, and if you're not playing as a team, it's going to be a little harder. And if there's someone stepping up more, someone pushing themselves more, especially as a team, it really doesn't key in for success. That
Yeah, Blue
anyone can
Jackets.
really make a
Yeah,
push.
yeah, Blue Jackets are actually the eighth seed that season. But let's move on. Let's move now to I'd say the next hardest to league to repeat with one exception, and I'm sure you know what it is when I say the NFL. Of course, the past 20 years have been headlined by the dynasty of the New England Patriots. You can kind of really, I don't think people think about it that much, but sort of split it into like a 3-3 sort of scenario where they had I believe 3 out of 4 years from at the start of the century from 2000 to '04. Uh, and then, of course, the recent years, you had Super Bowls 49, 51, and 53, the victories there. Uh, Finally, that odd streak was broken for the Patriots, not for Tom Brady. That's interesting to think about. But I digress. So since 2001, 12 different franchises have won a Super Bowl. Of course, the Patriots those 6 times, and then also the Buccaneers now have won twice with two completely different rosters. Of course, you had '03, the Pirate Bowl, John Gruden, and now Tom Brady, Bruce Arians. But as far as the last repeat champions go, you have to go back a while. That's why we were talking about how the Chiefs could possibly repeat, but they didn't. And now the last team to repeat was again that '03, '04 Patriots team. So you really see how with the major exception to what Kraft and Belichick have been doing in New England, it is very hard to maintain a championship level team.
Yeah, and staying on Kraft and Belichick, we never really see Robert Kraft get involved as much as some guy like Jerry Jones, where Jerry Jones makes all the decisions. In New England, Belichick is able to do whatever he wants. He can bring back the players, and people know that Belichick's a good coach. And just because who is stricter but gets the results, because he's so good and he has so much freedom of what he says, more players want to go there and they know the success. Also, staying on the AFC, it's definitely a tougher division because the last time a guy who wasn't Brady, Manning, or Roethlisberger made the AFC was there. Remember the 2000, right?
Yeah,
There,
I think 2001. I said yeah.
no, I'm going from the 2000 Super Bowl all the way down. There are three quarterbacks to not be Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady, uh, Ben Roethlisberger, or Peyton Manning. Do you know who they are?
I know we mentioned Rich Gannon in our Super Bowl episode. Shameless plug is shameless. There's
Mm-hmm.
Joe Flacco that one year, and then blanking on the third one. Let me try to think.
I'll give you a hint. He is the GOAT.
Is the goat, but Trace McSorley never made a Super Bowl.
Nah. Yeah, same team though. Don't worry.
Same. I said Joe Flacco.
Yeah. Trent Dilfer. How could you forget about the GOAT?
How could I forget? Wow.
Yeah. The Trent Dilfer versus Kerry Collins, aka basically the Ravens defense, and Jamal Lewis. But yeah, it's definitely harder to be in the NFL when also it's such an aggressive sport. Your body deteriorates after time. That's why you see most guys after in their 30s not really playing the same level. And going back to it, it is an extreme sport with only 16 games in a regular season compared to the other sports where they have 60, 70, 80, even 100 games in a regular season. So with 16 games, it's harder for most teams to win 9 or 10 games.
Here, I think one more thing when we're talking about again building and maintaining these teams. is that again, like we said, it can be easier in the NBA when the active roster is only a maximum of 17 with the MLB. It's 26, still I mean still smaller. NHL is about that same range. But the NFL you have to build a 53 man roster. Make sure 22 guys are starter level. Not to mention specialists and backups and all that. So you really it's just a championship team from 1 year needs to be a well-oiled machine, making sure nothing is wrong and having that sort of perfect storm twice in a row, let alone 6 times in a row. Not in a row, but 6 times in this century is pretty amazing.
Oh yeah, and if one part doesn't work, it's all going to fail. We saw that with the Cowboys the past year when Dak got hurt. Everyone saw that Dak could have been MVP caliber quarterback this year, but once he got hurt, they had a plethora of quarterbacks start for the Cowboys, and we saw how everything just kind of fell apart. So when one thing doesn't work, the whole system goes. Well, also as a Bears fan, as you being a Bears fan, you kind of know defense wins championships.
Yeah, it certainly does, and I think we kind of. I just want to mention that one piece can break the whole system. You saw without Eric Fisher this past week in the Super Bowl, that Chiefs O line looked completely lost. Um, but yeah, as far as that, of course, like you said, like the Bucks defense, which flew so under the radar this year that it was it surprised people maybe more than they should they were able to shut down the Chiefs offense.
Well, I mean, when you got Tom Brady on your team, Robert Gronkowski coming out of retirement, your defense and plus the other superstars that are still there, it's going to be easy to forget that amazing defense who did shut down the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. Reminder, I think this is the only time ever that Patrick Mahomes never scored a touchdown in the game.
And are we just gonna is this just a mandate to have one Super Bowl reference in every single episode we do now?
Yeah, probably because it was an impressive game at the end of the day. But the fans, let us know.
All right, let's move on because I think some people might be a little bit annoyed with us keep referencing that and probably dating this video a lot. But let's move now to the MLB. Where there, I feel like the numbers are going to change in the future. But let's look at what we have now since probably since the 94 strike we'll look at 26 seasons have passed since then, and they've produced 15 different champions. The Yankees have won 5 times in that stretch. The Red Sox have won 4. Giants have won 3, and the Marlins and Cardinals have each won 2. So you can see sort of some dynasties pop up there. The Red Sox were a little spread out. Yankees had that three-peat from at the turn of the millennium, from '98 to 2000. That's also the last time that any World Series champion went back to back. The Red Sox were kind of spread out within the past decade. And then you have the Giants winning sort of those 3 and 5 years. One more thing, as far as dynasties, I think we have to address it may be a little bit of recency bias, maybe a little bit of speculation, but we have to talk about the Dodgers situation because again, making the World Series 3 out of the past 4 years, losing to the World Series champion in all of those years, actually since 2016. Yeah.
With the asterisk mark, though, with the asterisk mark for one
yes,
of those
that
games.
is exactly what I was about to mention. Those 2017 and 2018 World Series were both you can say taken away from them by the sign stealing scandal, and we will all wonder and some will assume, some won't. Unfortunately, we won't ever really know, but we can only guess that they may be have won 3 of the past 4 if teams play by the goddamn rules.
Well, I think a big reason for why we do see why most people would say the Dodgers would have won, because when you look at the home versus away games a lot, you can see a drastic change in the numbers of how they do better. Obviously, the Astros, it's also with a home field advantage, you are going to do better, but when you remember when you're home, it's easier to do the sign stealing and all that. But another big key that makes it easy for baseball, well, not easy, just helps a team, is pitching and hitting. Going back to the 2015 Mets, who did go to the World Series and lost in 5 games, but we don't talk about that anymore. Uh, they had a stacked bullpen: Jacob deGrom, Matt Harvey, Jerry Familia, Noah Syndergaard, Steven Matz, and Bartolo Colon. Their top 7 out of 12 players that year, according to their WARs, 7 of the top 12 players were pitchers, being the ranked number 3, 4, 5, 10, 11, and 12 respectively. The big issue was it seemed that the Mets can never get on base and they can never score runs. So I think you need a solid bullpen like what the Dodgers have now, and players who can get on bases like the Dodgers have now with Mookie Betts and Corey Seager and yeah, just a lot of players who can do that.
Yeah, I think one thing we can kind of, and I kind of alluded to this before, but sort of how it's changing. And I think, yeah, 15 and 26 does sound like some sort of parody. But I think again, when you mention the Dodgers, and when you look at how the game is changing, I think it's going to be a little more dynasty heavy. Starting with, of course, the Dodgers, but looking beyond that, you can just sort of see how much more analytically driven the game has been just in the past 5-10 years. I mean, you have the start of the Statcast era. You see analytics being updated pretty much every single year. I mean, like 5 years ago, pitch framing seemed so revolutionary, and now we're sort of way past that. Um, and sort of where analytics have kind of risen up have been uh, generally in smaller market organizations. You have the Rays as the prime example. The Cardinals too. There, though that's a little bit of more willing to spend, which is still good to have in a team. I'm looking directly at you, Ricketts. Um, where was I?
I don't know, to be honest. You were talking about
Yeah,
lower market teams.
small market teams with analytics like the Rays, uh, I mean, of course, like the poster child, small payroll A's, and really for the past, I mean, the '90s 2000 era has kind of gave those teams a bit of an edge and kind of, I guess, sort of even like a level playing field, you can say, with the big spenders like the Yankees and Dodgers and now the Mets. As far as what it's going to look like now, well, you're starting to see. I feel like the Dodgers as the best example, combining the best of both worlds, combining the big market spending with the small market homegrown analytics. Andrew Friedman, the current Dodgers GM, got his fame from taking the Tampa Bay Rays to the World Series in 2008. Now, when he has the resources to take his analytical mind and assemble the best team he can, well, he assembles maybe certainly the best team from last year, maybe the best team this year, and maybe years to come.
Yeah, and I see we see the Moneyball model and the high payroll model working in the modern day MLB. Obviously, when we look at a lot of teams, like on paper, the Padres look solid. The Yankees are getting there. Mets are even playoff bound. Marlins, and then we got the big markets like the Dodgers, who are spending a lot. The Cardinals, who got these amazing guys in the offseason. So we could really see how both systems are going to work better for each team, and depending how much they want to spend on their player. And as we saw last year with the Rays, you don't need to pay these guys so much money to go so far. All you need to do is get the right players.
Here's the thing, though, and which is what I feel like I'm going to say why I think that there's going to be much more of a top heavy uh, sort of uh, sort of system in the MLB moving forward is just how much again you see it with the Dodgers, and you're gonna see it more with the big market teams that are willing to want to compete every single year. Like I mean, like I'm sure the Yankees and Red Sox, if they're not already following, will do soon enough. Um, is that again they're gonna combine they're gonna take the analytics that they're now able to catch up to, uh, and and take all the resources in the world that they have and just create year in and year out the best teams available. And there's no salary cap or anything to stop them from doing that. It really goes as they want to take it. And even just looking at the past 5 years, take a look at the cities that have won: Chicago, Houston, Boston, DC, and now LA. Those are all some pretty big markets. I think all five of them are top 10. Of course, 1 year before that, you have Kansas City, a bit of an outlier. But again, it seems to me like it's going to keep changing to what it's been in the past 5 years and to what it may be for another 5, 10 years. Again, with the exception of the St. Louis Cardinals, I do have to add, but they've always kind of been the exception.
Yeah, and I guess we do see a lot of teams do what's really popular in the NBA, while players go to the big market teams like LA, New York, Chicago, at least in the MLB for Chicago. But it really goes down to how good is a player when the time comes up for him to step up. Like as I said before, no one expected the Rays to go far last season. They didn't. No one. If someone told you last year, "Hey, the Rays are going to go to the World Series against the Dodgers," you probably laughed at them. I know I would have laughed at them. But it's really, and I get why players want to go to the big market. I mean, I don't blame Trevor Bauer for going to the Dodgers at all. The problem is how much more would the Dodgers have in the future to spend on these high players?
Everything, like I said, with when there's no salary cap and teams can spend however much they want, they will. I mean, you see with the Dodgers spending however much they can to, I mean, to produce a winning baseball team. And I think again, like you see, I know you keep mentioning the Rays, and while I will absolutely credit the Rays for with such a budget, being able to take a team to the World Series. I will applaud that to no end. But how much longer is that going to be a sustainable method until big market teams are able to hire away the analytics guys that they need and beat them at their own game?
Yeah, we did see this past offseason where they did lose a lot of key players. Obviously, Blake Snell is now a Padre. So I do get you're saying, and especially it is going to be interesting to see how baseball moves forward, especially without a cap space, as you keep mentioning. But I I don't know. I always feel like there is going to be that surprise team coming in. We saw how the Moneyball model does work in the MLB, especially. So I think some teams will find the right ways to make it go. As you always know, not all of these teams are going to have this high cap space to make it work or have so much money to throw at these players. So there always is going to be a way to find out how to do it without throwing money at the top prospects.
Yeah, no, of course, when you can save money, it always helps in any league. But again, but the teams that don't need to save as much, that can splurge, and you have seen this to an extent in terms of what dynasties have kind of emerged in recent history. With the Yankees of the late '90s, with the Red Sox for since 2003, was it? I mean, with San Francisco Giants, winning 3 and 5 years, like it's you cannot deny the advantage that the big market and the big spender has in baseball.
Oh, obviously not. They're always going to be the best of the best. But remember, the Royals, they went to back-to-back World Series. They lost to the Giants at first, and then they beat my Mets. There always is going to be that team. And I know they weren't the lowest salaries. They didn't have the lowest salary back then. But as I keep saying, if there's a will, there's a way. And teams are going to try to find it to work. Obviously, they are in a disadvantage, but they will always try to throw something at the wall to see what sticks.
Yeah, I feel like you said that best, sort of throwing things at the wall. Unfortunately, I feel like that if teams aren't already resorting to that, then I mean, then they might soon enough. But I think for the sake of baseball's parity, we can hope that things will stick for the smaller market teams.
I'm into that.
And now finally, because this I feel like is the biggest outlier where we've said for the past yeah, for football, for basketball, or whoa, I'm getting ahead of myself. For football, for hockey, it's hard to maintain a championship level team. For baseball, that may change soon enough. But I feel like it's certainly been a lot easier for teams in the NBA to do that. Since 2000, only 9 franchises have won titles. I will say, of course, the Lakers this past year have done it with a different roster than uh, than in uh, than in earlier years. Uh, but that's still only 9 franchises. Of course, the Lakers have won 6 championships in that time span. But they're not the only. They're far from the only team to have won multiple championships in that time frame. The Spurs, Heat, and Warriors have all won three. Uh, three um, 3 times in that span have there been repeat champions. Most recently with the Warriors in 2017-18, winning 3 of 4, and then also the Miami Heat in 2012 and 2013. Uh, and of course, you have the Lakers winning the three-peat from 2000 2002. So you can really see just how dynasty heavy it is in the NBA.
Oh yeah, and especially when you look at, I think one of the most interesting stats, how LeBron James went to the finals every year from 2011 till 2018. Obviously, they didn't make it 2019, but back again 2020, kind of showing how powerful or how simple, if you will, a team could make it in the NBA. Obviously, a big factor to that is it's only 5 players on the court, kind of doing the same job. It's not like where in football, let's say, if the offensive line doesn't work, then the quarterback is screwed. No, everyone has a similar to same job, is to score in the basket and protect your bat and make sure they don't score in yours.
Yeah, I think you kind of just said it best there. Just how much more MVP heavy it is in the NBA. I mean, in basketball as a whole, like we said it with yeah, Edmonton can get knocked out in the first round with Drysdale and McDavid. With LeBron and AD, that wins a championship. As really like as far as one player goes, it makes such an impact in basketball compared to any of the other sports. Here with baseball, you're just one of 9 players on the field. That you're 11%. As far as the NFL, you're one of 11, and you're only on half the time. That's about 4%. I mean, the last MVP to win the Super Bowl. Do you want to guess?
Last, oh wow, that's far back.
Yeah, it's a while ago. It's Kurt Warner in 1999.
God damn.
Yeah,
Wow.
and the NHL is kind of similar. Yeah, you're still one of 6, but even the best of players will only get on for a little more than a third of the game. Really only counting for about like maybe 5-6% of the total minutes. The last MVP to win the Stanley Cup. I'm not going to make you guess because I don't know if you get it, but
I would not get it. Please do tell.
yeah, 2003, 2004, Martin St. Louis with the Lightning. That's as far as the NBA. I mean, yeah, you're one of five players on the court, and you're only playing, or I mean, you are playing for about 3/4 of the time. I mean, you're pretty much taking up 14, 15% of the minutes alone. I mean, when you have two MVPs like with the Lakers, LeBron and AD, that's 30% of all of your total minutes allocated to the best in the league.
Yeah, and especially how those two players make up. And there's more obviously to the Lakers' success in that year, as they did have other good stars, decent stars, but just those two players alone really did make a difference for LA. Another big thing is that every team, it seems like they have one or two good players, if not more. I mean, Lakers have AD and LeBron. Clippers have Kawhi and Paul George. The Bucks have Giannis. The Pelicans have Zion. Both have Zach LaVine. Every team has at least one star, and that one star does make a high difference. Look at Bradley Beal, who's scoring 40+ points a game.
Yeah, certainly. I feel like though there of course there's having a star, but then there's having an MVP caliber player, and especially in again in a league where it can be so, I mean it can be easy again to to isolate these players, get the matchups you want, get especially when again. I mean, yeah, they're the defending champions. So I'll keep talking about the Lakers. When you have two MVPs, two near unstoppable guys, uh, that again, yeah, they're on the court for 30% of the time, but they can be much more than 30% of your offense and defense.
Yeah, and especially a big thing that does really work into it is the height difference for these guys. I mean, LeBron James is 6'9", while AD is only 6'10", but that 1 inch difference plays a huge factor for how you play. I mean, look at Shaquille O'Neal, who's 7'1", who really didn't have, if he didn't have to work as hard. I don't want to say he didn't work as hard because that's disrespecting him. But when you look at other guys who are maybe 6'3", he didn't have to do as much of practicing as him. He was just a guy who could get up in the rims and just dunk the ball in.
I mean,
I don't mean sorry, I just don't mean that to any disrespect to Shaq at all. Just want to clear that for the record.
okay. I mean, I just feel like one thing, yeah, one thing we didn't really, I mean, sort of brushed on a little bit. But again, as far as maintaining these dynasties, like it's one thing, of course, to have two MVPs for one season. It's another thing to keep them. I feel like one thing is again with how MVP heavy it is. Another thing is sort of how little guys you actually need to contribute. Again, like we said, the NFL active roster is 53 guys. In the MLB, it's 26. In the NHL, it's 23. For the NBA, it's only 17. And even in that, only 9 or 10 guys really play any given day.
Yeah, and also I feel like basketball, it doesn't have such a high intensity on the body as some of these other sports. Also, being inside, it is going to help with how your body's handling with the heat.
Yeah, I'd say another thing, kind of adding on to that, is just how much the NBA wants to keep players in the markets that they're in. Like you don't see a lot of these rest in peace Kobe Bryant type of guys anymore that are going to stay on the same team for 20 years. I know Devin Booker says he wants to, but he is the rare exception. I mean, I don't know how many guys, how many All Stars. I think probably all of them have switched teams at least once in the past 3 years, save for the ones still on rookie deals who will probably find their way out eventually.
Yeah,
And of course, the NBA doesn't really want that to happen. They want, I mean, they want to keep their stars happy, and they don't want their stars moving around, being able to sort of cherry pick, causing super teams. That's why you have a lot of exceptions with the salary cap, like I mentioned earlier, like where you have a lot of room for the luxury tax threshold, like where you have stuff like the mid-level exception, and where I think the most notably you have the supermax deal that can really only be offered by a team that doesn't trade for you.
Yeah, and also it feels like in the NBA, stars are more freely to move around to see what works. It's really rare to see a star stay. I think Zach LaVine and Bradley Beal are the only two exceptions of players now who are going to stick with one franchise. I guess in the past you could say Dirk Nowitzki before he retired, but going back to 2016, I mean, it seems like almost every single star was on a different team. LeBron James, Anthony Davis, what's his like there's so many of them. Gordon Hayward, Kyrie Irving, Isaiah Thomas, so many guys did leave their original teams and they were more able to move around. Kevin Durant, move around, see what works for them, find a higher market for them, and just see what sticks with it.
Yeah, I think I just want to get ahead of the comments for saying, oh, what about Steph Curry? What about Klay Thompson? What about Draymond Green? Okay, yeah, we will give you that, but at the same time, they were also already a part of a dynasty, so they didn't really need to change teams in order to win a championship. They're kind of just put in the right situation.
They were so good that the stars want to come to them. Just like when LeBron goes to a team, everyone wants to move with him.
Yeah, couldn't have said it much better myself. So I'd say one last thing. I think we can go back where I think we kind of figured out how what makes it easy to repeat with the NBA. I'd say let's go a little bit back to sort of the leagues where it's a little harder to repeat, like the NHL, like the NBA, and ask ourselves this question: how have teams like the Patriots and like the Blackhawks been able to create such dynasties when it's so hard to do that?
Well, I think in hockey terms, at least, getting cheap players in free agency and getting players from the draft. Obviously, Mariano Hossa was a great extension, which I don't believe them costs much. Drafting guys like Jonathan Tays was such a key thing for the Blackhawks, and we saw them able to build their franchise from the draft and some parts in free agency. For the NFL, at least, I think because the Patriots are such a great team and everyone knows about it, it kind of brings in the players. People want to be for a good team. They want to be coached by one of the best coaches of all time, being thrown touchdowns by the greatest quarterback of all time. So I think just their status that they have, they're able to create players who want to come in, coaches who want to come in, because they're so great. People want to come play for a great dynasty because they know, hey, if you come to us, it's going to be different. It's going to be difficult. You're going to be treated maybe lesser compared to other teams. You won't get as much freedom, but at the end of the day, you're coming off with a ring. And for basketball, at least, sorry, I didn't want to say something, but for basketball, at least, because baseball is high teams, you get the money, doesn't matter. But for basketball, it does seem like it depends where the money is and depends who is on that team. Obviously, people want to play with guys like Steph Curry, LeBron James, Kevin Durant. So big players are going to attract other players to come in.
Yeah, I feel like when you go back to what you said about the Patriots, kind of like the allure of the Patriots, and that kind of goes into I think what I feel like is the biggest I think maybe also maybe most overlooked part of these dynasties, and that is the how important it is to have players on team friendly deals. That again um, you don't see that a whole lot in the NFL aside from the big exception of the New England Patriots. Of course, Tom Brady prior to him signing with the Bucks was pretty historically having some team friendly deals. I'll look at the last Super Bowl the Patriots won from 2018. That year, Brady only made $15 million. I know only 15 million, but compared to what some of the other top tier quarterbacks were getting, that's not a lot. other key pieces to his offense. Sony Michel was still on his rookie deal. James White and Julian Edelman both only made about 2 million that year. Deron Harmon, he led the team with 4 interceptions that year. He only made 2.5 million. Trey Flowers led the team in forced fumbles, tackles for loss, quarterback hits, and sacks. He didn't even make 2 million. And going to the secondary, Devin McCourty leading the team in solo tackles, only 8 million. All pro Stephon Gilmore, he didn't even made less than 9 million. You can really just see just how important having these players on team friendly deals is, especially when you need to have so many pieces in place, like in football, but also like in the NHL. And I'll go to again the end of the Hawks dynasty. That 2014 to 2015 season was, and people kind of knew this going in, the last season before both Tays and Kane would have massive extensions kicking in. So that was kind of their last year on a sort of a reasonable deal that they're playing above, and they were already paying some of the veterans a lot of money, like Marion Hossa, like Duncan Keith. Of course, you had a lot of role players earning within the $4 to $6 million range, which is generally about a little more than the proportion of the cap compared to what they're going to see on the ice. But of course, they played up to it. It was a championship level team. But also, of course, you have young talent stepping up that year, like Brandon Saad, like Andrew Shaw, like David Rumblad, who were all contributing in some form or another. And I think kind of the perfect storm of all that led to that championship season and cementing them not just as champions but as a dynasty.
Yeah, and especially a big issue we're going to see now with the Chiefs is they're throwing so much money at these players. Patrick Mahomes making $500 million in his total contract, that it seems like they have to win it now. It's really about the now or what's going to happen. They're not really looking to the future for 2-3 years. I feel like that's a big issue with some of these teams because, as I said with the Blackhawks, they're able to get some of these guys on the cheap, whether that be veterans or guys who are still on the rookie contracts, which at the end of the day, a winning culture does make a winning team. And we see that time and time again. If teams don't believe in themselves, if players don't step up to the plate, we see how that detriments a team's success. But I do agree with you that team-friendly contracts do help more than these big salaries, at least in other sports outside of the MLB.
Yeah, I think the MLB. I think even if, and I know it's hard with how much the union is so strongly opposed to it, the salary cap, and I get that, but still you can't say that it doesn't hurt the pair. And I think if you ever do see a salary cap in the MLB, you'll start to see the emphasis on team friendly deals on players outperforming their contracts.
Yeah, a big issue is when players do outperform the contracts, they do want a lot of money. That's why you see like guys like Ezekiel Elliott or Christian McCaffrey making $15+ million this year, not even making the playoffs, while Ronald Jones II made barely $1 million. Someone who's younger, he still was on his rookie contract, but he still made less money, which is able to get some of these other guys in free agency.
All right, now I would I think you kind of answered a little bit of this, but one final question. I think since it's so necessary, I guess we can kind of leave basketball aside for this because again, like we mentioned, a little bit easier to create and maintain a dynasty there. But at least as far as the other three for now, do you think with the modern athlete, you always see the NFL, be it holdouts, the NBA, be it trade requests, max deals, maybe where they shouldn't be. Do you think that the players on team-friendly deals, and with that as a whole, dynasties in general, might you start to see them die out?
I think we're definitely going to see the atmosphere in sports change. Obviously, it's more of a player-friendly single player atmosphere system, whatever you want to call it, where players get to make their calls on what they want to do. We do see a lot of guys, especially like Russell Wilson, Bradley Beal, and some others getting upset and might even being traded. So it's really weird to see guys who are loyal like Mike Trout and Bradley Beal who still decide to stay with the Wizards. I feel like these bigger markets have the bigger players, which you would want to play with. Because in all honesty, would you rather form a super team with LeBron James, or would you rather try something on your own? You know what I mean? But
I mean,
we're definitely
that I really feel like depends on the player. Again, like yeah, maybe a role player wants to team up with LeBron, but maybe some other all-star says no. I want to create my own legacy. Get my own Finals MVP.
yeah, I get that, but I feel like a lot of players, especially the aging vets and the younger guys, the aging vets want to finally get that chip on the shoulder. They want to finally get it, while the younger guys they can see this as an opportunity to learn from the greats. We're definitely going to see a lot of. It's kind of weird to see a lot of guys, like I said, Mike Trout, stay with the Angels after he got the shorter end of the stick time and time again. Obviously, the way of sports is changing, so I do see. But just to go back, I still think it's going to be the same way sports. I feel like anything's possible for any team. I mean, look at the Warriors when they blew a 3-1 lead against the Cavaliers. Anything could happen with the right set of mind and the right set of dedication. But I do believe the higher marketed teams are going to get the better players.
Well, I've said all I think I've wanted to say. You got any final remarks before we can close this out?
Not really. No, I just think we're definitely going to see a shift in how players are being treated for the better or worse.
Yeah, I think we can both agree on that. And with that, thank you once again for listening to us and bearing with us. We do this every single day, Monday through Thursdays, trying to get it up at 4 p.m. Eastern time. To Spotify, Anchor, and YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Man, now, because you had that botched outro, and now it's messing with me. I'm totally gonna blame you and not just blame myself.
Yeah. Blame the Jew, of course. We're
All right,
both
but
Jewish. We can make that joke.
yeah. With all that being said, until next time, we will talk to you then.